How's everyone today? Um, is there any questions on the project? The main post is due Friday and then respond to 3 people by Sunday night. Any questions on it? No? Okay. So I think I mentioned it a little bit last class about the explosion. Um, let me share my screen. It's a train derailment. Somehow I shut it. But train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Well, there's tons of pictures. Let's see if we could just find images. So this train, it had 100 cars. 5 of them they're most worried with, but they said 10 to 20 had toxic chemicals, but 5 of them had I forget what it was called. It was like a vinyl. Well, we'll look it up after, but this was the derailment. 5 of them had toxic fumes and they were leaking. So then they decided to have a controlled explosion. And so we'll talk about that too. But I found some numbers and I thought we could work on our conversions to make sure we understand the basics, because your test will be covering kind of like what we'll cover today. I live about 35 miles from here, and yesterday afternoon they did what's called a controlled explosion. 5 of the cars that had that chemical, if they tried moving them, they didn't know if or when they would explode. And so they contained the area, they evacuated everybody, and then they had them explode. And the fumes were going the opposite direction of where I am, and then the wind changed. And so last night you could see fumes, or not see, but smell them in my home. But some of this we'll talk about. So I figured it's our project's dealing with this, and this is one that's just happened. So 5 of the train cars were derailed Friday, carrying it's called vinyl chloride, a chemical currently unstable and could explode. It hurls, you saw the black fumes, those are all toxic fumes, into the air, and shoots deadly sharp metal because it's exploding from the tankers as far as a mile, they found. So everyone within a 1-mile radius of the scene was advised to leave immediately. Now I have this up there. There's links if you want to look up more, or if we want to go into one of them, I put the links there. So this is where the explosion was. The red was the heaviest, but then they found things out further. And so the green is the 1-mile radius that they evacuated. How much area is a 1-mile radius? So we want to convert 1 mile to acres. If we want to convert miles to acres, we need to know the measurement conversion, right? And it was 1 mile. We know that, well, wait a minute, let me think. Whoops. Where'd it go? We know what it means when you have a radius in your circle. That's the distance halfway. So this is 1 mile all the way around. The diameter would be 2 because it would be one way, one the other. But when we're finding this area, the area of a circle, does anyone know the area of a circle? You don't have to have it memorized. If I put this on a test, I would give you the formula, but I was just checking. Area equals pi r squared. Pi is just a number in your calculator, 3.14. And r is the radius. It's halfway from the center to the outside is your r. In this case, it's 1. So it's pi times 1 squared, which is 3.14. And since 1 is miles, 1 you're squaring, but you're also squaring miles. So it's miles squared, or square miles. I'm just going to put down for miles. So we have 3.14 miles squared. 1 square mile is 640 acres. Any questions so far? So this green circle is 3.14 square miles. Well, let's find out how many acres that would be. So convert 3.14 miles squared to 640 acres. Now, as long as you're given measurements, you should be able to convert, like if you're given 1 square mile, I don't expect you to memorize that one. I don't even have that one memorized. But feet, inches, miles to feet, you should know that one. Time, minutes, seconds, hours, you should know those. So if I'm going to use 1 square mile and 640 acres, am I putting acres on the top or on the bottom?
On the top.
The reason we're putting it on the top is because the miles squared is on top here. So this 1 square mile we need to put in the bottom. That way square miles will cancel. So 3.14 times 640. Are you? It was 2,000 and so, yeah. Are you getting 2009.6 acres?
I did.
So that's how much area they evacuated. It sounds like a lot, but to try and visualize that many acres, It's not something I have a good handle on. And that's why I thought we'd see how many football fields it would be. A football field is approximately 1.32 acres. So if we have the 2009. How many football fields is that? Are we gonna multiply by this 1.32 acres, or are we gonna divide?
Divide.
Right, because we want acres on the bottom. Are you getting 1,522 approximately?
Yeah.
Still seems kind of large to try and visualize, but that's a lot of football fields. Probably could have picked maybe campus and compared how many, because then that would have been bigger than the football field. How many of your campuses could fit on it? But still, it's a visualization of how large. If you don't understand an acre, looking at the football field, most of us know how large a football field is. But any questions on that? They say that you fit, if you, normal housings that are being built now is anywhere from 5 to 8 homes on an acre. So if we went with 5 houses on each acre, you're talking 5 times 2,000, 10,000 homes were evacuated. Now it actually went larger than that, which we'll look at in a minute. But is there any questions on these conversions? Stuff like this is what you would have on your test. Any questions? Ahead of the, so I had mentioned that they did the controlled release. That's the explosion that they did on purpose so that they could control everything and where it was going. But the evacuation zone then, instead of being the 1 mile, they made it 1 by 2 mile area. Now a 1 by 2 mile area, I would assume, is a rectangle. East Palestine Village is about 5,000 people near the Pennsylvania border, and they were had to evacuate. First, it was about 2,000, but then they said when they expanded their area, it was 5,000. The blue circle is the 1 mile radius. So I made a drawing or a picture. So this would be our 1 mile radius. And we said that's approximately 1,500 football fields. If we go 1 mile by 2 miles, because remember, our radius was 1 mile. So then the whole way across is 2 miles. And then they're going 1 mile, so figure a half a mile each way. This is less area. They explained something wrong. So if we find the red rectangle, the area of that, move this over some. So if you have a rectangle, does anyone know the area of a rectangle? Area is length times width. So it's 1 mile times 2 miles, which is 2 miles squared. The circle was 3.14 miles squared. So if they're talking a rectangle, this is less area. I don't know if they felt this part, maybe there wasn't people there, so they didn't need to worry about it. But from the aerial view, it looks like there's people there or homes. But 1 square mile, 1 by 2, I mean, it's less of the area. So somebody explained something wrong. And needing to know things like that. Like me and my son were looking at it last night and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And he's like, wait, how can that be? So first I said, I had this red rectangle up here because I knew my radius was 1 mile and this went 2. And I'm like, well, there's all this. And he goes, well, maybe instead of just being like a half this way, they took it here, which makes sense. But there's still a lot of area that's not going to fill in these little corners. And as we can see, we're talking over 1 square mile is not included. So this actually got smaller. So then he said, well, what if it was an oval instead? Maybe they didn't mean 1 by 2 mile. Maybe it was an oval. So I looked up the formula for an oval and I have this. A and B are your 2 lengths, your length and your width. So if we had an oval, and this is 2 miles, and this is 1 mile. Will it be a larger area? Now, when I tried to draw it on there, it was actually smaller, but let's look at what the formula does. So the area is pi times 1 of the lengths, so 2 miles divided by 2, and the other length, 1 mile divided by 2. Everyone knows where the pi is in their calculator, right? Mine is right here. I don't know if I have another calculator. No, they're at school. But if you're not finding on your calculator, use 3.14. Pi is approximately 3.14. I have 3.141592654, and it keeps going and going. But 3.14 for us is enough. So if we take that times 1 times it's even smaller. So someone did something wrong. I think what they meant to say was it went from a 1 mile radius to a 2 mile radius, the circle. That would make more sense that it got bigger. Because an oval not putting. That would be 2. And then if we bring it up to the box, it would be 1. So that black oval, that would be the area if it was 1 by 2. Doesn't make sense. So I think they meant it went from a 1 mile radius to a 2 mile radius, but I couldn't find that written anywhere. So you do have to watch words and notice that some things just don't make sense. When they said they expanded it to a 1 by 2 mile area, they didn't explain that properly. Any questions on that? So I think what they meant was 2 mile radius. Does a 2 mile radius double the circle? Our area for the circle was the 3.14. So if we do a circle with a 2 mile radius, what do you get? Go ahead and find it and put the answer in the chat. It doesn't double, does it? We had 3.14 square miles. What are we getting here? A lot more than double. Are you getting 12.5? So if they did go from a 1 mile radius to a 2 mile radius, the area went to 12.56 miles squared instead of the 3.14. Any questions on that? So I think this is what they meant, because it went from a little over 2,000 to 5,000 people. So I think they meant a radius, but nothing said that. Any questions on that? So this would be 4 times the size. Even though we doubled the radius, area went up by 4. And that's because area is squared units. So if you think about 2 doubled or squared is 4. So the area is 4 times it. Any questions on that? The first evacuation order included 15 to 2,000 of the town's 4,900 residents, but then when they expanded it, it did go to 5,000. What percent of the town's residents had been evacuated before the second one? So I wanted you to practice finding a percent. We'll go with the 2,000. So if 2,000 people, the reason it's 15 to 2,000 is because 500 wouldn't leave. But then with DeWine's order, anyone that stayed would be arrested before the controlled explosion. So we'll go with the 2,000 because eventually they had to leave. I think one person was arrested trying to go back in yesterday. But 2,000 out of, we'll go with 4,900 since we're taking the high one. How can we find out what percentage was evacuated? There's a couple ways you can do it. You can think of the percent of the whole equals the part. Is one way. In this case, you use the decimal. Or you can put the percent over 100 equals part over the whole amount. In this case, you use the percent because dividing by the 100 makes it a decimal. But either way is going to get you the same answer. It just depends on a thought process. This one's nice for what we were looking for though, because we're looking for the percent and we have the part. The part is the 2,000 and the whole is the 4,900. Or you can set it up this way. I like to go, the entire amount was 4,900 times my rate equals the 2,000. $4,900 of a certain percent is 2,000. So you could have done it this way. Or here, we know we need to divide by the 4,900 because it's times R, always do the opposite, so it will cancel. Any questions on that part? Now, when it asks you to round to the 10th, especially if it says percent, this is the rate or the decimal. You need to rewrite it as a percent first and then round. Remember, making it a percent moves it to the right 2 or multiply it by 100. And then round. If we're going to the 10th, that would be this one, 40.8%. So approximately 41% of the town had to evacuate before the controlled explosion. And then when they decided to do the controlled, it was actually more than that town. They went out further than that. Any questions on that? Positive. According to the Disease Control and Prevention, vinyl chloride in water or soil evaporates rapidly if it's near the surface. Vinyl chloride in the air breaks down in a few days, resulting in the formation of several other chemicals, including hydrochloric acid, formaldehyde, and carbon dioxide. None of those sound good. They said if you're in the stronger, well, there's this, that red area that we saw, I was watching some more stuff this morning. The red area, If you stay in those fumes, it's death. That other area, the second area, that area, they said that you could have lung damage, sores on your arms. So it's gonna make you sick, but not as bad. Well, it's not gonna kill you, but you're still gonna have a lot of damage. So they wanted to make sure no one was in those areas. But if we think about this and what we've been learning in class, what is the stalk? Anyone? Just in this paragraph, what is the stalk? You could type it in the chat if you don't want to talk.
The chloride?
The vinyl chloride, yep. That's what we, or not we, but the train brought into the environment was vinyl chloride. That would be our inflow. But it's also, you could consider these other ones stocks also. Hydrochloric acid, formaldehyde, and carbon dioxide are also a stock. They weren't initially caused from the train, but then they turned into those harmful things also. So those were all brought in as an inflow. Well, I don't know if you, let's see. This is definitely an inflow. These other ones were caused from it being there. So I would think those would be an inflow also, because they would not have been there if it wasn't for the vinyl chloride and if that wasn't for the train derailing. Now, if we talk about outflow, the outflow would be, it says in the air, it breaks down in a few days. And it said in the soil or in the water, and soil, if it's near the surface, it evaporates fast. So water and soil is one way it would be an outflow along with the air. Any questions on that? Does that help explain stock? The inflow is the stuff that's coming into it, which would be the vinyl chloride. But then the vinyl chloride is causing these other three chemicals. So those are also an inflow then, because they were not there to begin with. And then the outflow is how those get out. They get out by water, soil, and air. Any questions on that? Now, I smelled it in the air last night. This happened on Friday. Well, the controlled experiment happened yesterday around 3:30. But I live at least 35 miles away, so it traveled that far. So there's a huge, think of, I mean, I could smell it. My throat is bothering me today. I don't know if the two have to do anything with each other, but they could. Think of people who are halfway between that and how much they have. And that's in your air. Now they're telling, let's see where I put it. This was talking about 10, there was more than just that was hazardous material. They just only talking about that one. They did receive an alarm of a defective detector shortly before the derailment. So they knew there was a problem already. That's what's making it a human error. They failed to take care of things, and there was a faulty detector, so then it didn't detect when there was a problem, and then it derailed. This is showing the particles. So in Pennsylvania, which is closer than I am, I think it's, oh, I don't know, Pennsylvania is probably an hour from where this was. So it's further than I am. I'm about a half hour. This is about an hour. You know, this is a detector for rain. And if it's at about I think it's at a 20, that's when it's going to start raining, a nice steady rain. When it gets to 60, those are 65 golf size hail. So this is about half the size of a golf ball. That's the size of the particles they were seeing yesterday in Pennsylvania, an hour away. So it's another way, even though this is radar for the weather, they've used it before for, like, if they'd see all of a sudden this would go up real high, they'd look to see, and it could be a huge flock of birds. It could be a tornado and all the debris that's in it. So it's more than just rain, snow. It can detect any large particles in the sky. And so it detected the smoke at a 31.5. And this is like the density of it. So if you think of the density of your golf ball, think of half of a golf ball. That's what the particles were like. In where I live in Youngstown, I think I put it here somewhere. Yeah. I thought I put Eric Wilhelm is our weather person. Oh, here it is. And he posted last night, I think it was like 10:30, in 1 hour when that wind had changed and it finally hit us, it went from 12.6 particle size to 34.5 in an hour. We thought they were going to close schools, but the wind kept going, and so then this morning there wasn't any snow. But this is measured in micrograms per cubic meter. So I kind of put some information for you. I think we'll find more out as time goes on, and maybe we'll talk about more of it. I think it's interesting because it's something that's happening now. And it's only 7 hours from you. It's not that far. But a microgram per cubic meter, that's what they're measuring these in. It's a metric system measurement. And if you think of the parts per million that we've talked about, you would just take this value and divide it by 1,000. So it would be 0.0345 parts per million. So it seems kind of small, but it's definitely deadly. Any questions on that? No, they're saying that there's no problems, that it's still on fire. And so they're trying to contain the fire, watering it down, watering the area. How is it not getting into the ground and the soil and the water? And most of this area, these homes are wells. They use well water. They don't have water coming in. How is it not in their wells? Any thoughts on that? Let's see if we could find. Come on. Yeah. There, nearby, there's a river. I'll show. I don't know if we have to watch the video to see the pictures. But there were tons of fish that are dying 2 days later. This one man hadn't left yet. And there were the fish in his stream were dead. And they're saying that the chemicals didn't cause it, but you can see in the water that it's like glossy. So then the EPA's got to test. So you got to check your water and then see how that water runs off into your wells. You have to test everybody's well. And then he has livestock. How do you move all that livestock or bring in fresh water? If they're telling you there's not a problem, I don't know. And so when these catastrophes happen that you're doing projects on, and they're trying to do cleanups, there's a lot of different things to look into. Like here you have, it's not just in the air, it's watering down it so that it's in the land, in the water. Any questions on that? Okay, I just wanted to do a little bit of things you might see on the test, like those conversions, and show you a man-made catastrophe that's currently underway. But there is a link if you want. Let me see if there was, I think there was a couple other things I wanted to look at on it. They didn't say anything about the animals yet and how it will affect. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. I was looking to find like the height of the smoke and how far it would spread. You could see it right here. Someone took a video. But it is all over YouTube. I think I covered everything. Yeah, there was 100 cars, 10 to 20 cars carrying hazardous materials. So I'm interested to find out what those other materials were, because they only talked about 5 cars carrying the vinyl chloride. And if you look at the pictures, let's see what this one shows. There's someone, and my son, I drive him crazy when I do this. They showed the video in vertical and then he turned it horizontal, because I'll be recording him vertical and he'll go, "You're supposed to do horizontal." So then I just flip it and he's like, "You can't do that." So somewhere there's a video someone did that. Oh, that's a volume. I don't know why the volume won't come on.
So this is a 1 mile radius around the derailment site. You can see a good portion of it is in Pennsylvania and includes parts of Darlington Township in Beaver County. Governor Josh Shapiro tonight announced that he had spoken with President Biden. Says Biden's offering the full support of the federal government to Pennsylvania and Ohio. KDK's Lauren Linder has been covering this story since it.
Train derailment more than 72 hours ago. Despite this,
This
officials
was-
say they are remaining cautious and want residents to do the same. Flames shot up into the air and smoke filled the skies surrounding East Palestine, Ohio.
Everybody worked together and accomplished our task here safely.
As crews conducted a controlled release of 5 derailed cars carrying
So
vinyl chloride.
this is when, this was the second explosion, the one they controlled.
Comes after late Sunday. Specialists discovered at least one of the
And you still have all those chemicals, even though it's controlled, supposedly. You still have all those chemicals going into the air. But the thing was, they did a lot of discussing before that. Because if they would try and move those trains and then they exploded somewhere further into the town, I mean, the damage is already here. Keep it here, clean it up, and then rather than having more area contaminated. So that was the best idea, but I don't know how they can tell people the ground is safe, the water is safe. Any questions on that? Positive?